Listen up. We are back with another episode of the Construction Mentor Podcast. My name is Ike. I am your host. What are we here to do? We're here to promote the construction industry. We want to let everyone know that this is the place to be. There's no other industry where for every ounce of work that you put in, you're going to get a guaranteed reward. And if you put in that work long enough, the return should be exponential. If you're already in the industry, we want to share the experience of people already in the industry. We want to give you the tools to take your career to the next level. That's why we bring in guys like my man, Jayden Robison here from CRR Concrete. He's out in Utah, totally other side of the country, but it's the same industry with the same trends. And I think we're going to find that out here. Jayden also has a podcast that you should go check out, Blue Collar Future. If you want a future in the blue collar world and you want to learn more about that, I'm not the only guy out there. Definitely go check out Jayden's content. He's here for a reason. So, Jayden, how are you?
Great, man. How are you?
I'm all right. As I told you, I'm on vacation, so this isn't my normal background or my normal setup, but we're making it work. Content doesn't sleep. I'm actually in New Hampshire right now.
Nice.
So what's beautiful about what I'm doing in my end of the industry, I primarily work from home. I work nationally, so I've actually been in New Hampshire for almost a month now, working remotely and taking a few days off here and there to go to the lake and stuff like that with my kids. So that's where I'm at.
That's crazy. Yeah, you mentioned something before we started recording about how you're implementing some software in your company right now, and you guys are like a massive deal, like a big company.
4,500 employees, $10 billion a year. For those of you listening, I do not see nearly a large share of that $10 billion. I get my nice salary. I'm taken care of very well, but by no means am I pocketing a substantial amount of that. So there's a reason why I'm in a blank room in an Airbnb in New Hampshire right now. But so software, I'm half software development right now, and I'm half doing small projects for like Fortune 500 companies all over the country, and in Canada, and soon to be in Dublin in the UK. So really doesn't matter where I am. It's just as long as I have an internet connection. That's how I'm operating now. Tell me about your business, what you do in your day job. We'll talk about Blue Collar Future in the future of this episode, but tell me exactly what you guys do, and maybe even how software impacts that.
Yeah, we do residential flat work, concrete. So basically just new home construction in Utah, and some small commercial projects. Usually, I'm trying to think of size on. Some commercial projects are probably up to about 10, max 20,000 square foot buildings type stuff. But yeah, primarily lately production home, kind of track home style residential construction, but also some big custom homes. So
tell me what you mean by flat work, and what a home or residential, quasi small commercial construction looks like. And let me tell you what I mean by that. I'm in New Hampshire. I grew up in Boston. It's all old foundations. If it's a new foundation, then it's poured, but then it'll be stick frame, right? So it's framed with wood, or it's a larger building and it's steel and maybe some glass. I also live in Florida right now. That's mainly where I live right now. And then I moved down there, and it's all concrete and it's all block, and the only thing that's wood or framed is really kind of the roof. So what does that look like? What do structures look like in Utah, and what part of that is flat work?
That's interesting about I was going to say California, the Florida thing about all being block. I would imagine that because of the humidity down there, and also the crazy weather they get. But basically, kind of what you described right there, we're doing new foundations and new footings and stuff on houses, because it's not like older buildings, and it's primarily stick frame. And we're seeing quite a bit of post frame type stuff, but it's still mainly stick frame, and for smaller commercial buildings, it'd be steel framed. And as far as flat work goes, that would be your basements or your slabs for slab on grade, garages, and your essentially all your flat concrete that you would need, plus
driveways,
stairs,
patios, sidewalks, walkways, things like that.
Yep.
And would you ever do like the second story of a building, like in a high rise? Would you ever pour a deck like that, or is it just strictly smaller, one level? you're
We
afraid of
have.
heights. You,
We we
you
have.
don't go higher
So
than your knee.
we have. I actually don't know if we've done. I can't remember if we've done any on our own. We might have. We've got a lot of friends around here, and then like um, family also that does flat work. So we've helped other people on like literally second story applications of decks and stuff. But I can't remember if we've had any jobs of our own. But we have in the recent year done some water tanks, which has been interesting. So we poured the lid to a water tank in St. George. I don't know if you know where St. George is here in Utah. It's about 4 hours south of us, and that was I think about a 500-yard pour. It had to be all done at the same time, and it was 40 feet in the air. It was interesting.
So
So
I want to get into, how you got in there and maybe even your family history in the trade and what people can make and all those types of things. So we're going to get there.
uh
But the last thing that I'm just interested in about Utah specifically, and I don't think a lot of people understand this, but especially even in construction, because a lot of people do interior stuff and they don't ever get exposure to any kind of a site development or doing footings or anything like that, even on a small structure like a house or a small commercial building. So again, in Boston, New England, the ground is different than Florida,
yeah.
right? So it's a lot easier to find rock or hard subsurface. What I would say in Florida, it's an absolute swamp. So there's no rock and no hard surface or anything to hit. So there's different things that you have to do, right? You may have to go 50 to 80 feet down with concrete just to make it solid to be able to build on top of. In Texas, I'm building something right now where 300 feet of sand all the way down, and they had to do 15 to 20 foot deep piers or until they basically hit a rock to build that structure. So, what's the typical land like in Utah?
The land we have pretty good soil here and dirt conditions. So typically we don't need to dig down very far. Most of the footings for our houses are only down. It really depends on how big the house is, and technically speaking, you're really only digging down as far as you need to for like if you needed a basement or something. So it's like we can just pretty much build on our native soil as long as it's not fill material, if that makes sense.
Got it.
Which most of it is you would be native. I did hear someone recently, I think one of my neighbors, family members or something, had a lot in the area that they were going to build on, and then they found out it was like 20 feet of fill material, so they ended up being kind of a wash there, and they didn't go through with it. But most of the time that's not necessary, so you really only dig down a few feet depending on what you're doing. If you're doing a slab on grade, you're really going down 3-4 feet maybe, just to make sure you're on a solid ground, so native soil. So yeah, we've got good earth here.
I'd love to hear about how you got in the business and what that looked like for you. I know you have a family business.
Yep.
But when people think about trades, a lot of them think about carpentry. I think just naturally people go to carpentry for people that aren't in construction because everyone knows, what a hammer and saw is from when you're a little kid. And then it goes into like the sexier stuff. Like everyone knows what a plumber is, even though they make fun of them. And even though they do make a lot of money, right? Everyone knows what a plumber is, and then an electrician. I bet if I went and polled the public, 9 out of 10 people don't know what flat work is, nor would they look at pouring concrete as, a good way to make money. Yeah. So what would you say to the young people that would look at, a company like yours and other companies like it, as an opportunity? Why should they be interested in concrete at all?
Concrete's an interesting thing because like I actually had today, just a couple hours ago, one of the HVAC guys came up to me and was asking a question about framing that was going on inside the house because he thought I was a framer for some reason. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he was like, oh, you're not a framer? Because I had my nail belt and saw and drill and all that stuff and was doing a bunch, had a bunch of wood and plywood and was building some forms for a set of stairs to go into a house from the garage. And concrete is interesting as far as flat work goes, specifically because there's a lot of like carpentry aspects to it,
Mhm.
but also a lot of there's an art to the finishing of concrete, because you're taking such a rough material that starts out wet, we'll say, like water, or
Mhm.
mud, what we really refer to it as. And within a 3-4 hour window, it turns rock solid, essentially. So, and the act of finishing and placing the concrete is almost like an art form. I get people watching us while we're working, and they're like, man, you get that's like an art, and it's so cool to see so many different like disciplines
Mm.
went going into one. So if you take that from a different angle and look at footing and foundations, there's a lot more just like form work in those, and pouring, because when you're doing them, the pouring is the last step, and then you're basically done, right? So like you all of the work is in the prep of the job. With
Right.
flat work, it's depends on what the job is. There's prep, and then the pour and the finish is like they're all equally important and take a lot of time for each. So
Yeah. So what I would just point out about what you said, a lot of people don't realize, number one, what bad concrete work looks like until you see it. You know what shitty concrete when you see it, right?
even when you see it, people just don't even notice. I think that's a weird thing about it.
And when you're talking about like an art component or a prep component, and how you were mistaken for a carpenter. So concrete doesn't just show up, right? You don't just
Yep.
like pour it. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to form it, which is what
Yep.
you're talking about,
Yep.
which is when you get 2x4s and plywood and whatever you have to do to actually basically
Yep.
build the box or whatever shape it is to pour concrete.
Mm-hmm.
I have in my house right now, they just did the walkway, and it's a nice, swirly, wavy looking walkway. Well,
Yep.
that all has to be made with wood, and laid out and all that first. Like there is definitely an art form. There is a precision to it. And then when you're pouring it, one of the unique things, and I didn't have an argument with somebody, but it was a flat work guy or a concrete guy in Southern California, and he was like, we have the toughest job because once we pour, it's like the toothpaste is out of the tube. Like we only have so much time to get it right,
Yep.
and we have to finish. Like you can't just drop your stuff and leave when you're pouring
Yep.
concrete. Like
Yep.
and you also can't take your time.
Yep.
And what I will say is, especially when you're watching finish work, for flat work, it is oddly satisfying.
Yep.
It's one of those things like those videos that you get addicted to when it's,
Yeah.
you'll watch somebody power washing or something like that, like a super dirty driveway. And then it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like really satisfying to watch.
Yep.
It is really satisfying to watch someone pour concrete and then get it that nice flat and smooth, or that brush finish. You know what I mean? So
Oh
I
yeah.
definitely would say that. So how'd you get started in that work?
So my dad's uncles actually were kind of the family members that started back in I guess that would be probably 80s at that point, 70s, 80s ish. My dad lived here in Utah. He started with them kind of. He lived here until he was about, I don't know, 10 years old. Would go on the job sites with his cousins. Like he'd hang out with the family and go to work. And they moved to Texas, and he moved back here, and just kind of started into concrete. And then he started his own business after working for them for about 15 years, doing commercial flat work, like pretty much strictly commercial flat work. And then he's been running this business for 22 years, I think, 23.
Wow. So he's been doing this for like 37 years.
Yeah.
Some quick math right there.
Yeah, pretty much. I think let's see, he's 50, I don't even know, honestly, 53, 50, something like that. I can't even remember.
Maybe, if he
Something.
started at 18.
I don't know. He started at 18, he was doing it, summers and whatever before then. So I got started.
One of the cool things that I talk about,
kid.
with the trades is the ability to break off and do your own thing. Right.
Yep.
So like, even if your dad was making crap money for a long time, he did get a skill that he could then go take on his own and do his own thing. And then lo and behold, look what he did. He now has a business that he's bringing family into. Right. So he's building and stacking on top of that.
Well, and
So
if you look at who he worked for too, a lot of the big flatwork guys in our area actually came from his uncles. So they branched off, did their own thing. So we know probably 3 or 4 different flatwork guys that were somehow influenced by his uncles who he worked for and with, and we're all friends and stuff. They're all friends and
it's
close.
almost like the coaching carousel in the NFL. It's
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
could do a tree of everybody that came from Bill Parcells to Bill
Yeah.
Belichick and Nick Saban, and then everybody
Yep.
that
Yeah.
crapped out from them, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, that's the cool part about it. Is it's super cool. And that's probably one of the biggest things I would say that it's a draw to construction. And it's really pretty easy to start your own thing, especially if you've been doing it for 10 years. If you work for someone for 10 years, you probably know plenty to get right after it. As long as you can figure out the business aspect, because that is another factor that people don't really think about before they start their own business. So
Yeah, I think they think that the people that own the company are just sitting there collecting money and just kind of
yeah,
you know
yeah, pretty
yep,
much.
yeah, this is nice, and
Yeah,
then they're
they're
on the
like there
boat, and
wasn't
then they're
any
on the
work, like there wasn't any work or late nights to get to this point.
yeah, or any headache to keep payroll going or anything
Yeah,
like that, right?
yeah.
So growing up with your father in the business, did you always know that that was for you? Like the whole family, everybody just eats, sleeps, and breathes concrete. Did you want to do something else, and this is like a fallback? How'd you get in?
This is a big part of why I started my podcast. So growing up, my dad would always actually say to get out of the business. And this is partly because of the glorification, I think, of college and telling everybody, go get an education, go use your brain for stuff. Not that he hated what he did or he didn't do well, um, but growing up, that's like what I was always told, and I was pretty good math, science, all that stuff. I kind of fell into this engineering route, so I was actually
Right.
going to school for engineering, and I wasn't really planning on doing concrete, and it wasn't a fallback either. I was working for him doing that, but I had always just kind of planned on going to school for engineering
Right.
until I was at the university, was pretty close to a bachelor's, I think. And then I started really looking at numbers that I was going for electrical engineering, for at numbers that electrical engineers get paid. And then I had an active internship offer and also subsequent um, offer for a position once I finish and graduate. And it was like 65,000, I think, upon graduation. And I was like, I'm going to go to school for 4 years to graduate and make basically what I can make now if I had been just doing concrete. So that was like a realization to me. That's when it kind of started to set in. And I kind of, around that point, I was coming around to the idea that I actually did like concrete because I didn't like it
Mhm.
before. And I think that was partially because of this whole push to college. And I was like, oh yeah, I need to go to college to be successful. It's like, that's what I need to do. Right. And so, around that point is when I really started to dig into concrete and actually started to have an appreciation for what I did. And, luckily I was already doing it and I have obviously an in, I guess. So it kind of fell in a way. But yeah, it was almost like it was meant to be.
So it's really funny. I was on another podcast and I made a statement that, a lot of people wouldn't believe it, but the people that do the install actually oftentimes make way more money than the people that actually design it and the drawings and
Yeah.
the engineers and the architects, definitely the
Yeah.
architects. Um,
Yeah.
and I actually today, every once in a while, a comment will just kind of like catch my eye and I'm like, I can't let it go. You know what I mean? And this guy, he basically called me number one, a scam artist because I have a course available, which actually is doing very well. And I've had a couple people actually get even higher salaries than I am telling people to expect, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Right. But then he came at me with some reference to some code that I'm sure you could answer that has, about concrete and piers and some sort of foundational structural, US building code. basically saying like, oh, if you don't know the answer to this hyper specific trivia question, then you're not an expert in construction. And I'm like, okay, but number one, I'm a GC, so I don't need to know everything about it. I just need to know a little bit about a lot to run enough to run the project. And I hire the Jaydens of the world to know how to build the foundation adequately, and you manage those relationships. I know enough to have a conversation and hold you accountable, but ultimately I rely on you to be that expert.
Yep.
Number one. And number two, I was like, so even if I can't answer that question, are you denying that there aren't tradespeople that make $100, $150, $200,000 a year in a trade, and there aren't engineers that make less than that? That doesn't change that fact, and people don't understand that. And to go from $60,000 starting as an engineer to $100,000 as an engineer will take a long time.
Yeah,
like it doesn't happen overnight, right? So I just think it's funny that you literally just said that, and I was just getting angry about that like 2 hours ago.
Yeah, no, it's always interesting to see that, and it's because there's been such a push for so long that people just can't see around the fact that you could have a decent living in the trades. And it does take some time to make a decent amount of money in trades, depending on where you go. And people look at the starting pay in a trade where you might start at $25 an hour or something, and then you go look at, oh yeah, well, you start as an engineer at 60,000, 70,000, whatever you're going to say. But that's also with 4 years of school. And after 4 years of being in a trade, you'll be matching them without having to spend your money to get there.
And you really could probably start your own company. Like if you should have learned enough in 4 years to do something.
Yeah. And so like if we look at where our situation is, I saw a video you did earlier about union versus non-union. And that's an interesting topic here because the union presence is like non-existent. I don't even know a single person in the cement finisher, plasterer, whatever local that's here. And their Instagram page looks like some freaking janky like pretend page. It's like they're like don't have any sort of presence, and I can't imagine they have any pull here. And I've never heard of anybody being in it. The thing here that's interesting is the opportunity that you have. So you can work for a residential, contractor, and move up just about as fast as you want to, if as hungry as you want to be, and start your own thing. And that's typically what people do. They either go in a union, work there, however long, get their dues and all that stuff, or they go like in a non-union rate, and they can, through their own merit, get ahead and either start their own business or go work for somebody and prove they know what they're doing, prove they can work hard, all that stuff, and then get paid reflected on that. So there's like a couple different ways, but never in a trade you go make a bunch of money by just like sitting around. So I don't know. It's like I think that's part of what people don't like. Maybe it's weird to see because there's a lot of misconceptions about what it actually is to be in a trade nowadays.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And a lot of people also don't understand. And I think it's a lot of the union guys, like in Boston, New York, and New York's slipping, Philadelphia, Chicago, strong unions, right? Yeah. They think that that's the whole way of the world, the way that every market operates, and it's not. And to be honest with you, outside of those markets, it's like far and few between. The guys hurt actually for work so often because they don't, like, if you're working for a union in Utah and you, like you just said, and they don't have work, they don't have a union job, and a client doesn't want to pay for that, and they don't have a strong enough foothold to force a client to pay for it, then they're not going to get the work, right? And if you're in the union, you can't just go work for whoever. You have to work on a union job for a union shop. And if they don't have work, then you're sitting at home and you can't get paid. So I will say too that, and then again, my whole family's union. I'm from Boston. Like I grew up in it. I totally get it. And I prefer to work on union jobs in certain markets. But they're lying to you if they're trying to give you the impression that they're not slipping and losing real estate and losing their luster in the big cities, they absolutely, there's a lot of people in the big GC world that, the top 10, top 20 E&R companies that if you go talk to them and you ask them how long a union's going to be around, a lot of them think that it's going to be down to just mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection in the next 10 to 20 years. A lot of them don't think that the painters and stuff are going to be around for much longer.
Yeah.
So that's just a fact.
Yeah.
People can say what they want about me saying that, but that's just a fact.
It's really interesting to watch right now, and it's a topic that I have never really had much of an opinion on because there's just not really much of a union presence about anything here. I think the Teamsters union is okay here, but I don't.
Well,
think,
you get a lot of shipping coming out of like I know one of our clients in Utah, UPS is a big client, right? So you have a lot of warehousing and shipping coming out of Utah.
Yeah. So there's like the Teamsters union is at least has a presence here, but as far as other unions go, it's just not. And I know a few people that are in unions that are trying to get out. Know one person in particular that's in a union here that's in the iron workers, or actually he's in the operators union, I think, doing tower crane stuff, but he's actually at a California pay scale and union, but working here somehow. So that's different. That doesn't really.
He's probably doing all right.
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't really count, I don't think. It's just not a topic that's brought up, and there's so many people that are super passionate about it. Okay, like you talk to them, they're like, if you're not union, you are like a piece of trash. Like you are terrible. You're not even. Yeah, you're a rat, dude. And it's like you're not even a tradesman if you're not in the union. Is what they're trying to act like, and it's just not how it works. In a lot of places, and I'd say the majority of the country. I can't speak for sure, but knowing what it's like here, I can't imagine the entire country is union, and it's just here in Utah where we don't have a union presence.
So one of the things that I think that needs to be highlighted, and I don't want to go down a road to bash unions or whatever, and people's way of life and the way that they build. Like I said, in big cities, I prefer union contractors. And what's funny is actually a lot of that has to do with people in the office. It doesn't even have to be with the people, the union labor. It's just different. But I was always told that there's union and non-union, right? And the phrase that just caught my eye the other day that I just never even realized was merit. You use the word merit, right? Yep. A merit shop. People outside of the big cities, they don't use union and non-union. It's union and then there's merit. Merit meaning what I said at the beginning of the podcast, right? If you prove your worth and you prove that you can do it, there really is no glass ceiling no matter what the hell you do in construction. I don't care if you finish clean job sites. I don't care if you show up with Windex and a mop at the end of a construction site. If you are good at it, you can make a lot of money. I had a kid in Florida who made enough money to pay his 5 employees for 2 years if he never won another job again in 6 months. Let me rephrase that. In 6 months, he made enough money to pay his 5 employees for 2 years, even if he never won another job, right? And that was final cleaning job sites, and he was great, and he was 21 years old. Yeah. So, and that's not even really a trade, right?
Yeah.
So, talk to me. Now we talk about merit, right? So you work at a merit shop, we would call it that, and you're family owned. Talk to me about nepotism. Nepotism is one of the buzzwords that people associate with the construction industry that has an extremely negative connotation.
Yeah.
So what was that like for you? How were you treated different? How'd you have to come into the company?
So when I was starting, there was quite a few guys that had more experience than me, and it was no different than if I was not the boss's son. So I think it's hard because a lot of people have this idea that you can't make it in a construction company, especially in the residential world, unless you have family in it. And it's like the boss's kid gets handed everything. The boss's kid's like becomes the boss in like a year, or like he walks on the job site and he's the boss. It's like, that's the idea, but that's not how it goes. And anybody who has ran a business for any amount of time would never do that, because especially in construction, and especially with what we do, we talked about how it's time sensitive. Like as soon as the concrete's on the ground, like you can't just walk away from it. You have to be there. You can't take your time. You're on the concrete's time, and you mess up and you may be tearing the whole thing out redoing it. So how could you possibly just hand over major responsibility to someone that has no experience? This is my big issue with the nepotism thing, is you don't see as often a boss's kid that holds a lot of position and power in the company and makes a ton of money that doesn't actually pull their weight. Because that's not smart business. That is like, if a business can do that, they are a massive company that probably has more concerns about whether or not their kid is making
And the
too
kid's
much
probably
money or
not in the
something.
way anyway. It's like
Yeah.
they're
So it's
probably
like,
bigger than that.
it, depending on where you go, it may change, but for the most part, in a construction business, you're not going to see the boss's kid just like in charge for no reason, because it's not good business practice. So I say that because from a younger age, I was cleaning tools, loading up boards, getting stakes out, like all that type of stuff. I did that for years and years and years because I was too young and little to do anything else, right?
Yeah.
That it's not like I just walked in the job and is like all of a sudden I'm making more than everybody else and I'm the boss. And that's what everybody thinks it happens. As far as like how my experience has gone, I've had to learn everything, show I can do everything, be able to be trusted, because we can't just turn over a job to somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, because that could potentially cost tens of thousands of dollars, So in my experience and in my work experience, I've had to climb the ladder, go from the very bottom, and for probably about 5 or 6 years, I was low on the totem pole. There was a guy that was our kind of top guy, but until he left, and then I was kind of like the top guy where we're at with us, because we're a smaller company, so we had 5 or 6 guys, and the guy that was kind of our top employee left, and that was how I kind of became our top employee at that point. So it was years before I ever even was in a position of responsibility outside of normal.
Yeah, I think with nepotism, the real, everything you said, I agree with, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But the real advantage to nepotism is the intentional mentorship, right?
Yep.
There is a spotlight on somebody and they are getting special attention, but it's not like they're getting handed anything. Typically, it's because there is an extra incentive for the owner or somebody high up that does know what they're doing to see that person succeed.
Yep.
Right. And in today's day in construction, you don't have to be that family member or son or nephew or niece or whatever that is, because of platforms like this one, because of platforms like yours, Blue Collar Future Podcast, right? There is enough avenues to learn things, your own way, and enough podcasts and enough people trying to be mentors for people out there that you do not have to be related, right? And that's really all that they were getting, is they were getting mentorship, right? So the real key to lifting, and the other thing is that the glass ceiling was lifted off because people did want them to get up higher, right? But the real key was mentorship. And I think talent is so far and few between in the industry that if there is a ceiling in one company and you're good enough and you get the right mentorship and you get your tool, I use the phrase toolbox figuratively, not literally, but your skill set is there and you're worth it, that ceiling will be removed at another company and they will want to bring you in and they will want to pay you more. So the key really is to seek mentorship. So who was that at your company? Was it your dad, or were there other people that were taking you under the wing?
I learned by watching everybody. And I really can't say there was any specific special attention from my dad either. The way I learned mostly was watching other guys and asking questions. And that's another thing. So I like how you mentioned that it's the special mentorship that people usually get as far as nepotism goes, because I do think that is very true. But you also have to look at that from the point of view of today's day and age, where a lot of people that have construction companies, their kids aren't even working for them anymore. So they're
No,
having
they
to
don't want to.
find, yeah, they're having to find guys and be special mentors to other people. Like I know a bunch of uh, trades that we work around that none of their kids work for them, and they have all of their top guys are nothing, no family or nothing, and that's an important aspect to look at. And that also doesn't mean that you can't make it in a company that has family working there. And I do think that it's hard because family will probably take priority a lot of times,
Mhm.
except for if it doesn't make sense and it's a good business, right? Because you're not going to just hand over the keys to the kingdom to some freaking dunce, because then they'll be running the business into the ground. You know,
Right.
it depends on how your kids are and how the kids in the company are. They're not just going to be handed everything. And if they are, it's probably a big enough company that it's not there's other avenues there. So as far as special mentorship for me goes, that was maybe at some level my dad, but also I learned on my own by watching the other guys and asking questions and practicing doing the job, which is the cool thing about working in the trades. You can learn on the job by hands-on experience. So
What is your role now? So you were kind of low man on the totem pole 5, 6
yeah.
years. Top guy left. You became the top guy. What are you doing today?
Yeah, I am foreman, essentially running jobs. That my dad still shows up. He shows up in the mornings. We pour early. A lot of times he's leaving to go do other stuff because the business needs to be run. So he's going to look at jobs and do his invoicing and billing and stuff. And so then I'm managing the rest of the day from there. So managing the pour and finish and that type of stuff. And it depends on the day too, because we've kind of got a lot going on, getting really busy. But as far as like, we are at a point right now where we need to split up and like grow our company, but we're kind of like in a middle zone where we have a lot of jobs that require a lot of guys, but we could split up into smaller crews and
Hmm.
take on and
Are
take
you
at it
still a
that way.
six man company?
Yeah, I think we have 7 guys. We have a part-time guy. He's doing some schooling right now. He's going to do something else, but he's
So I don't know
kind
if
of
you have you ever heard this that six from 6 to 7 people is usually when you need a second crew and a second manager.
yeah. Well, we're
That's like
that's
an
why I
old like
was
SEAL team. Like if you
yeah
read any of Jocko Willink's books
yeah
or anything like that, it's like 6 is the max for a team, and then
hmm
you need to start building the second team. And it
yeah
sounds like you're there, and that's going to enable you either to do more or do bigger, right?
yes. So that's where I was getting at is we're at a weird point where a lot of our jobs are big enough where we need the bigger manpower, but then we also do split up and tackle things in smaller crews. So
Mm.
like I'll be I pour things on my own while we have other jobs going on. But most of the time we start off in the morning, one big crew, and then split up. So I'll take
Are
some
you the
guys
oldest guy on the
somewhere.
crew?
Yes, actually, I am. Yeah, well, or actually, you know what? We have some guys. I have the most experience. I've been the longest, but
Okay.
everybody's about my age or younger. So
Okay, so it's not weird to. What I was fishing for is if you were managing, down to people that were older than you,
yeah,
because that's a skill that a lot of people have to learn.
yeah. No, it's hard. It's hard. I've worked with guys older than me, and so the guys that it's hard in this industry because there's a lot of people that don't really have ambition to move forward. And we've had guys working for us that don't really care to do anything more than show up, if that makes sense. So that's more of the reason why you see younger kids come in and surpass
Mm.
other guys. And that's why, like, there's a lot of crews that have older guys that are kind of just almost laborers, grunt men, because that's kind of all they want to do. And that's fine. That's not everybody needs to start in a company and go all the way up and become a foreman and do all that type of stuff. Um,
Right.
some people just want to show up and learn a skill and do a job. Um, so we've been in a situation where I've had to kind of manage some older guys where we've had working with us, and it's kind of rough because I almost don't want to listen because they're a lot of them can be really stubborn and think their own. You have to be careful with how you talk, like really, really careful with how you talk to not come off as like condescending or like offend them. It's especially hard with some of the Hispanic guys around here because the cultural barrier is different. So they communicate differently, even if
So
they speak
there's
English.
two things that so the first one, the one that you just said, the cultural difference, the
Yeah,
Hispanic element. I've definitely worked with guys who English wasn't their first language and they struggled and they
yeah,
thought that I was talking down to them and assumed that they were
yeah,
stupid because they couldn't
yeah,
speak English fluently. And I'm like,
yeah. No,
no,
it's
I'm not.
crazy.
But that is something to be aware of. But the
Uh-huh.
first one that you were talking about with, when you're younger and maybe you're a younger millennial, I think I'm in the middle of being a millennial. I just turned 35 like 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
Um, and or Gen Z or Gen A. I don't even know if Gen A is working yet, but Gen Z coming up, the boomers and the Xers really like to make it sound like the Gen Z and the millennials are like the snowflakes and the really thin-skinned group.
Yeah.
A lot of the ways they are, but the boomers and the Gen Xers are the most sensitive people
Oh
on a
yeah.
job
Oh
site,
yeah.
especially when they're talking to somebody younger than them.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just said, if you look at them the wrong way or you have the wrong tone or they feel like you're talking down to them, it immediately goes. And I had a
Yeah.
huge argument on social media about this a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
but it immediately goes to, I've been doing this since you were born. I've been doing this 30 years. I know how this is supposed to happen. And just because they're older than you and have a gray
Yeah.
beard and a gut, that just gives them the trump card that
Yeah.
they don't need to listen to you.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's going from attacking it from that angle. So the people that are not managing everybody and they're that age and they're just kind of working, I don't, sometimes they're a really skilled worker, but they just don't want to be a foreman because that's a whole different skill. Because that's managing people and trying to keep the job moving and see the whole picture, make sure everybody's doing what they can to get it done. That's a whole different skill. A lot of these guys probably know, and if you come to them and ask them how they think something should be done, what they say is probably right, but a lot of times what happens is they don't have the full picture because they're not the one running the job.
yeah.
So it's hard to know that because if you don't know, like let's just say you don't have the plans or you don't have you didn't have the conversation with the general contractor about what needed to happen and how it needed to happen. There can be a lot of fuzzing of the lines of how it quote unquote should be done and how they think it should be done versus how it needs to be done to get the job done. So it's hard because what I see is they want to be the one making the decisions and because they know what to do, but they don't want to take on the responsibility of making sure that of being the foreman, of being in charge,
So what you just said is dead on, and it's something that I cover in my course, by the way. The second section, I think it's the second section, is about leadership and how to lead people that are older than you. And what you just did by asking them a question is you empowered them, you made them feel included, you treated them like an expert. Everybody would love to be treated like an expert in something, especially if you've been doing it for a really long time. And just the fact that you included them and the approach is, hey, I don't know what to do, or what do you think about, or just what do you think about this? What would you do? Or, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think about that? And then when they tell you what they think, give them a follow up, challenge what they say. Well, but why would we do it that way? Well, I was thinking we could do it this way. And my concern is, should I be concerned that the finish isn't going to come out or that it's going to crack or, whatever it is? That's the better approach rather than trying to pull out, unzip your pants and break out a ruler or a measuring tape,
Yeah.
as I would say,
Yeah.
right? But it's very important. So as somebody who now is leading crews and has had people older, younger, and as you said, I say all the time, the talent pool is really low. If you
Mm-hmm.
just want to show up and do your job and just try 10% more than everybody else, you're going to shine and you're going to get paid more and you're going to rise pretty fast
Yeah.
because the bar is so low. So, what are some simple things that you look for or that you hope to see when a new guy or girl comes onto your crew?
Honestly, just uh, paying attention and like asking questions and trying things. So the hard part with us is it's really hard to have hands-on instruction with people, like someone guiding a newer guy while we're in the middle of a big pour, because it's so time sensitive. It's really hard to explain the whole process in enough detail and time and not lose the project, if that makes
Mm.
sense. So for smaller companies, that's always been a struggle, like being able to train new guys. And I think that gets discouraging for people in our trade because sometimes progress can be a little bit slow, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. But that's usually because when people like that go in, they kind of just let everything happen to them, and they just kind of let everything be told what to do, and don't really pay attention to little details, and don't really try to jump in and do their own, like hey, can I come, can I do that, can I do this, do I need to do that, do we need to shovel here, like that type of stuff sets you apart, like you mentioned, um, and can help you learn your job much faster. So it's hard with us. The training thing is hard with us because of being in the smaller business. It's you can't just have one guy
Hmm.
hand holding. That's one thing I would say. A union approach is great if there was a union thing here where you could have a whole training program laid out. And
Right, and that's
that's
where
a
they excel. They
yeah,
have night school, and you work during the day.
exactly.
You go to school at night.
Exactly. So in order to get around that, you have to be able to show up and really dig in and pay attention to how everything's done, and try to take at least like one thing from the day before to the next day to the next project to see if you can anticipate something, jump in and learn. And that's usually how you learn fast. And that's what we would like to see, and
So
how we can tell.
you just highlighted something that I see in the industry. I think it's amplified because of what you just said about the timing of the concrete and curing and
Yeah.
all that stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that I see even at the GC level where
Mm-hmm.
a project manager will just say, you know what, screw it. Like, I'm just going to do it because I don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
And the path of least resistance is me doing it because I know how to do it. Just go get coffee or something. And it's very discouraging for a lot of people.
Yep.
What I tell people is to create the perception that you're worth the time, right? Because if time is their most strained resource and commodity, then you better be worth it. And the way that you do that is by paying attention, by asking questions, by trying to clean up the job
Mm-hmm.
and participate, ripping responsibility from people, showing up on time,
Yep.
not itching to leave. These are all just very small things that
Yep.
seem maybe insignificant, or maybe it's like grunt work or busy work, and you don't think that you're doing anything important. But the best thing you can do for yourself is create the right perception. And
Mm-hmm.
that is the most important thing that you can do.
Yeah. I mean, it literally comes down to how much do you want it, and and how fast do you want to move up, right? And the pool for talent's so small, like we've said. The guys that do that are few and far between. Most of the time you get guys that come and just kind of want to be told, and they take forever to learn things because it's even if you try to go through the hand holding process, and you explain things over and over and you walk through it with them, a lot of times they just don't care that much, don't pay attention that much. They're just kind of here to get a paycheck and go.
Hmm.
And they're the types that'll show up late every other day, every few days, whatever. And it is what it is. Just kind of accept it for who they are. But they don't care. They're just here to pick up a check, right? That's kind of what you're dealing with. So you don't be that person, and you're pretty much guaranteed to be successful.
Yeah.
So
So let me
that's how it
ask
is.
you, again, and I don't want you to be specific about your company because I know how sensitive these things can be, but
Hmm.
for you and your competitors, and it sounds like you know your competitors, their family, friends, and things like that. What's a competitive wage for somebody coming in, little to no experience, to do flat work in your area?
I think in residential applications, it's usually anywhere from 20 to 25 starting. Um, and then from there on, like you said, the glass ceiling's kind of been taken, so you kind of can just move as fast as you want to or don't want to. Um, Most of our guys are in the higher 20s at this point, I think. So plus benefits if they want. So that's kind of
And that's like
what
your
the
full blown journeyman. That's like when you're not, green, just came off the street. What's a competitive like journeyman or mechanic? What do you guys use? Journeyman or mechanic? What's the preferred
there we
word? But
don't
what
really
would a competitive wage be?
not really using those terms. That'd be in the 30s. I'm at 35 at this point with
Okay,
benefits and truck and um, all that stuff. So that's but that's me being the only person really that's been working for long
sure.
enough to be at that point. So we have a pretty young crew at this point in time. Um, one of our guys that worked for us for a while that would be a comparable level was going to come back and work for us and make about the same. And that's what the industry kind of standard is. And it's crazy because I was looking at the union um, pay scale for the cement finishers, and I think I make more than what their wage is. So that's
Really?
pretty crazy. Yeah, for Utah, that's pretty crazy. So um, plus bonuses too, and overtime, and obviously all that stuff.
So that is in the ballpark of the average salary in Utah. However, there's no fringe benefit. There's no truck. There's no gas card. There's no. A lot of those people have student loans, and they're
Yeah,
paying somewhere between two, three, $1,000, $2,000 a month in student loans,
if
which
yeah,
not
that's
basically knocks down their salary to the poverty line pretty quickly.
yeah, yeah,
So that's not bad. That's not bad for picking up a trade. That I mean, I don't know if you've started to hate your dad or you got in a fight at Thanksgiving or something. You could probably go start your own business if you wanted.
yeah, yeah. Well, and that's what everybody asks. They're always the question is always, are you gonna take over the business? Or are you gonna go start your own business? And it's interesting because I think honestly I could be a lot farther along where I am right now if I had done everything that we've been laying out in this podcast. Because like I mentioned, my journey's been kind of uh, going to school. I was going to school full time while working full time for three 3 years, 3.5 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I that wasn't really dedicating my full energy to doing this job. And even after that, I kind of was like, I don't want to say finding a way out, but I was just kind of doing other stuff the whole time.
Yeah, right.
So
You
I've
weren't you
really
weren't giving it the full focus.
yeah, I almost never have been until the last probably 2 years or 3 years. Um and a lot's happened in the last few years and it's been great, but I almost wonder how different it would be if I just went right out of high school and just like hammer down full focus, eat, sleep, breathe concrete. I've always worked doing this, but it's never been, this is going to be my career. I'm going to chase this and be the absolute best. That's never really how my approach has been. So to consider that and where I'm at, I think is pretty good.
Well, listen, I couldn't agree with you more. I think, I got my mechanical engineering degree and I got an MBA.
Yeah.
And I was in engineering for a while, and then I've kind of bounced around in contracting. And
Yeah.
if I were to do it again, I probably wouldn't be a GC, and I definitely wouldn't have went to college.
Yeah.
I just would have went and worked for the HVAC company that I was working for in high school. I would have learned everything in and out. By 23, I would have probably been doing some project managing with 4 years of, being a tech in the field under my belt and learning that stuff. And by 30, I probably would have started my own company.
Yeah.
And if I wasn't, ascending now, I've done okay. Now I'm 35. I'm a director at, a top 10 GC, but
Yeah.
it's just very interesting. how the perception changes. And if you could go
Yeah.
back and do it again, even if I just did the same path again and I was, going to work for a GC, like where would I be if
Hmm.
I knew what I know now?
Yeah. Well, and that's how it always is, I mean, there's a lot of people I talk to that went to college that do the thing they went to college for and just don't even like it at all. And they want to completely switch careers in their 30s. And I think it's hard. I try to not be too anti-college. And I think a lot of people that listen to my podcast think I'm anti-college, even though I went. Um, it's it's hard to get kids that are 18 years old to go to college and figure out what they want to be for the rest of their life. And I think it's unrealistic to expect people even in their early 20s to know what they want to do. I think that's the time where you go try things out. Maybe you go to school if you have a thought or a desire to go study something specific, or you bounce around a couple trades. You figure out what you like, because otherwise, like you can't expect younger kids to know what they're going to do for the next 40 years. It's just not realistic, and that has led us to a point now where I'm seeing a huge trend in people not wanting to go to college and wishing they didn't go to college because it was just a big waste of money and they don't even like what they were going to do, and they were sold some pipe dream that all they needed to do was go to college to get a degree.
I
So
shared a stat one time that I think it's like 80%, 86% of people with student loan debt regret it.
yeah, exactly.
So that's
And
like a staggering number, and
and they were
it's
they were just about coerced to do it too by their counselors. Like, where
it's
are you going to go?
it's
What are you going to do?
27% of people, only 20% of graduates use their degree. And I saw a
Yeah,
stat today that I haven't proven yet, but I will. I'm looking for the resource because I asked
yeah,
that 92.3% of jobs in America do not require a college degree.
yeah. That doesn't surprise me.
So there's really, you
Yeah,
just don't even
at this point.
90% of the time you don't need it.
Well, a quick side note: so when I decided I wasn't going to follow through with electrical engineering, I was kind of chasing down a little bit of a programming type, a software
Mhm.
development type thing, and started looking into that. And when I met my wife, and she was a web developer, um, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll go be a web developer. And I started like kind of looking into that. You don't need a degree to be a web developer, and you can learn that stuff on YouTube, and you can actually, as a web developer, make a ton of money without a degree. So I'm like, why aren't people doing that type of stuff? I know a bunch of people that have, like, after going down this rabbit hole, that have gone that route. But to me, sitting down at a computer all day and going, that focused on my screen, that wasn't for me either.
Well,
So
listen, I even, I'm even telling people now with like the course that I made and stuff like that. I've had somebody that was working at a pizza place. I've had somebody that was working at a grocery store.
yeah,
They paid $449 to take my course on Course Careers. Go check that
uh-huh.
out, link in bio. But dead seriously, and I'm not ready to share the statistics yet, but the statistics are strong. A construction management degree
Uh-huh.
will earn you a starting salary somewhere between $55,000 and $70,000 in
Uh-huh.
most markets,
Yep.
right? 70 would be like New York, 55 might be like Utah,
Yep.
right? Well, I have people getting hired right now in the 60s, in the 80s. So
Jeez.
what's the return on investment for somebody paying $100,000, just round number, for a college degree versus $449
Yeah.
and getting that same job in 10 weeks instead of 4 years and $100,000 debt?
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that? And I
Yeah.
make the argument all the time that, I mean, I'm sure you run into it. I run into college graduates with electrical engineering degrees, mechanical engineering degrees, construction management degrees, yada, yada. Whatever it is, the joke of the industry, the construction industry, is that on day one, they still need to be taught everything as though
Yeah.
they didn't go to any type of
Yeah.
education.
Yeah. Well, that was also another kick in the pants for me because, as an electrical engineer, you need to know a bunch of math, and I liked my math fine. So whatever, I did all my math and got it out of the way. And by the time at this point, when I realized all of this, I was probably 75% on requirements for a math bachelor's degree. So did a bunch of math. I ask engineers, about classes I was taking and stuff I was learning, when the last time they used that was, and they're like, I don't even remember that or how to do that. I've never used that. And I'm like, well, why am I learning it? I understand the critical thinking skills you need, but why am I learning all this stuff that theoretical mathematicians are learning to go be an engineer? It doesn't even, it's just such a bloated waste in
I
the
just
degree
made a post
space.
about this. I just made a post about this. I don't know if you saw it. This is what I would call the education industrial complex.
Yeah.
50%, in some cases 70% of college courses are general education, stuff that you should have learned.
Yeah.
A lot of it you should have learned in high school and
Yeah.
have nothing to do with what you're doing,
Mm,
i.e., chemistry or English 1 or
mm.
whatever. But even the ones that are related to your degree,
Yeah,
mechanical
there's
engineering, electrical engineering, I don't know anybody in HVAC, plumbing, or fire protection that's used differential equations, calculus 4, calculus 3, or calculus 2, or
nope.
1.
Nope.
Algebra is pretty much it, and all the equations are pretty much there.
Uh-huh.
Like, even the relevant education is not that
Mm-hmm.
relevant. So if 80, 85, 90% of your courses aren't relevant to your career,
Yep.
that is 80 to 90. That would be on a $100,000 degree. You just threw
Yep.
80 to $90,000 out the window.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Well, that's
College,
exactly it, dude. In my 3 years of schooling, basically none of it was used by the degree or by the engineers, essentially. Like I spent 3 years of schooling that was all preparatory base knowledge you need to have. Like differential equations was one of my last classes I took and stuff. It, nobody used it, at least in the detail that I learned it in. You could have consolidated probably 50% of the classes I had into like a specific engineering class for my degree. But they didn't, and they don't, because they can charge you more money for it. And that's when I really started becoming disenfranchised by the school stuff, is like, just waste all your time that could be probably cut in half to learn what you need to know.
it was funny because I was designing ductwork and fire protection and plumbing systems.
Yep.
And I sat for the EIT exam, which is like for people who don't know, it's the engineering and training exam is what I call it. But it basically, once you have that, 4 years later, you can go get your PE stamp, and that makes you a real life engineer that gets to take responsibility for drawings and stuff like that. The EIT exam, which should be the entry to you being a professional HVAC,
Yep.
structural engineer, civil engineer, whatever, had absolutely nothing to do with my day job. I was already designing those systems for several years before I took that test, just from what I learned in high school and then in my internships in college.
Yeah.
It was about kinetics and statics and just stuff that has nothing to do with air in a duct
Yeah.
or heat transfer or
Yeah. No,
fluid
nothing.
dynamics or anything. And it
Yeah.
was like, and even some of the stuff that was about fluid dynamics
Yeah.
wasn't about, calculating water mains,
Yeah.
like
No.
the size of a water main or the water pressure in a main,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
It's
just
crazy.
even the testing, and that's why I say it's an industrial complex.
Yeah. For sure. I,
It's this giant web of irrelevant crap
yeah.
uh, that we've woven
Well,
ourselves
yeah, they
into.
just
So
they just they just try to add in everything they can, split it up as much as possible to get you taking more classes to charge you more money. I mean, that's the way I'm seeing it.
yep.
So
So we're over time. I try to keep it to an hour, but this is a
that's
good
all right.
conversation. Is there anything that you were hoping you were going to get to talk about, or any kind of message that you'd like to leave out there?
I think I'd just in closing say, like I always do, that the trade's a really good option if you like working with your hands and you want to be out um, basically forging your own path. It's like, sky's the limit. You can go where you want, do what you want. Even if you're working at a crappy company, you're still getting experience. Just about anywhere else will take you, like you mentioned. Like, you can go work for someone else that sees your experience. That's very valuable and will pay you what you're worth. Um, all sorts of options out there. And there's a bunch of people that are leaving the trades because they're aging out. And this is a continual problem that I think we're going to have for a long time, that we don't have enough people to replace. So there's going to be even more opportunity coming up soon. And I'll say lastly that AI is not taking your job. So you'll have job security. So,
Amen.
Yep.
Well, Jayden, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you taking the time. Where can people reach you, and where can they find your podcast?
I'm mainly on Instagram, Jayden R. Robison, Blue Collar Future, and we have a concrete page as well that I kind of operate all of them, CRR Concrete. So kind of mainly on there on all of the pages.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Make sure you go check out Jayden's content. And for everybody out there, I'll see you next time.
It's a pleasure.